I was in my home in floods of tears, thinking there has to be more than this. Every person is simply a divine being that is on their soul's evolutionary journey. We are the biggest mystery to ourselves. We are a seeker, but we don't realize that what we're seeking is ourselves. We're not as connected to the earth and the elements as we used to be. The David Kingdom said humans are in trouble. We need to do something here. People are seeking healing. They want to be free from this closed mental patterns. All of these different ways that are being offered for consciousness on the planet is gathering up the fractal. We're refugees from our hearts. You don't know it's what you're looking for till suddenly it's there. We're not in tune enough with ourselves to know what is. It was quite interesting to notice how many people have this certain kind of experiences and how we have all been attracted to this flame, shall we say, of Richard Rudd, with his prophecy of the great change. One of the things that was clear to me when I met him, I knew that he was seated, and there has always been a place in me since I was very young, where I thought, whatever this incarnation is about, there has to be a real change collectively in humanity, where so many things would touch me deeply, like so much suffering and so much conditioning, and we're kind of still in those places of ownership of things and people and power over others. And so there was always a place in me, and maybe it's the Aquarian, could be that too. The Aquarian that has this need for humanity in a way to come together and care for each other, which sometimes Aquarius is not seen in that way because they can be cool and aloof, and at the same time, I'm blessed with a Leo moon, so I don't get to be too cool and aloof. But there is that kind of quality of care for friends. And at the same time, there is something in the nature that is the field is the friend, that every person is simply a divine being that is on their soul's evolutionary journey. And I may not like some of what I'm experiencing when I'm with them, or I might, not want to hang out with them all the time or something like that. But I have deep respect for whatever is happening for another being is between their soul and the divine. And whether that's their own divinity within that soulful expression, not to make it something that's not theirs, but something that's on a road that is bigger than I can comprehend. So it's taught me a lot of respect for others and for the roads that they travel, and allowed me to stand clearly in what the reality is for me, which again and again is going to come back to love and truth and freedom. Yeah. So the great change for me is, I was struck when I was very young, and I was deeply in it at different times myself, of the depth of the emotionality of the melodrama of what's happened and the story and oh my and poor me and all of those things that happen in love relationships. But there was also a place of suddenly falling into love without the object that sort of washed away the melodrama in a very intense way. And it was kind of shocking somehow, as if somehow I wasn't feeling because without all of that intense emotion that goes with it. But then I realized actually what is really here is fresh and alive, and the feeling is deep without the layer on top of the story, and the intense emotion that gets locked together. There's me and the experience, and then there's the intense emotion and the perception, and they're all like this in a tussle. And in some moment of release, I thought, oh, there is a depth of clarity here that brings an allowing and a respect and a distinction and a revelation. And it was one of those moments of real freedom that occurred when this melodrama and this caught up in the story of who did and they did and the government did and whoever did. And suddenly that wasn't the experience anymore. And for me, that's the great change, an aspect of it is when each being can come to their own heartful reality and recognize that we don't have to stand against each other. We can actually stand alongside. And I can still stand in front of someone who maybe stands for things that are different than me and say, I don't need to agree with you. And I also don't need to make you wrong. But this is what am standing for. So there's something about the change for me is like a kindness and a softening and a open heartedness, but with that channel that goes from heart to head, clear mind and open heart, so that there's humanity has a possibility of being in co-creation once again with nature and all beings. So when I saw Richard, I thought, oh, he's the one that's brought through the illumination. But actually, without all of us who are waiting to receive it, there's a reciprocity there. It's almost like we have to call in him in. We call in our fractal. He's called us in. We respond. And that's the beauty of this kind of work. You don't know it's what you're looking for till suddenly it's there, but there's a seeker in you. You might not use that term, but there's something that's not okay that you search for that. And I feel that there's millions of us on this planet who are dedicating themselves to this inner journey that is producing sacred humans. We don't have to wait for the children. We're here. We have to model so that the children have an opportunity to flower and blossom. So that's a
Yeah, it really resonates watching the little ones at home actually recently. Just yeah, it's very much monkey see, monkey do, not what monkey hear, monkey do. On that note though, you mentioned standing side by side whilst honoring each other's differences, and yeah, I in some circles, I feel more and more people are opening up to this. And then I take a glance around, and it seems like in other circles, it seems like it's harder than ever before for people to be able to acknowledge each other's differences, let alone honor them.
mm,
And I find, and maybe that is, I don't want to use the word cataclysm, but it's in my awareness right now. So I'm just going to chuck it into the conversation. Sorry for that. But yeah, is it, like, if there is a great change, do you think these are some of the signs and symptoms? And is there an invitation to be somewhat okay with the breaking down of certain things? Because it does seem to be a bit of a hot mess at times.
I think it is a hot mess. I think it may become more of a hot mess. Recently I've met quite a few people who, I'm just going to say it as they would say it. They're so lost in conspiracy, which, whether we want to call it conspiracy or just facts that we know about that are supposedly should be hidden. And I find that every time I meet someone like that, and I'm not saying this is true of everyone, but very often the people that I've encountered recently are so busy with what's not okay that there's no hope, there's no light. There is only this complete misery and devastation. And, we're caught in a system that doesn't support us. And I hear all that. And when I was in my 30s, I was busy with it, busy with all kinds of people, David Icke and all of the stories and whatever was going to be on the forefront. And these days there's all kinds of marvelous speakers. I feel to me is that I can't change that. But what I can do is constantly ask myself, what is here now? And again, I bring myself back to the heart. This is a practice. I have to ask myself again and again, can I see the innocence in what's going on? And I remember His Holiness the Dalai Lama, or this is my fantasy, that he said there's a fine line between ignorance and innocence. And I think that there is a fine line, because I certainly think about elders, or even what we're all taught at school. Nobody teaches that. I'm not going to say nobody, but we're very lucky if we have teachers who inspire. And I've been lucky to have those at different stages of my life. But I was also a dreadful student at school. I refused to go. If you're not going to educate me, I'm not coming. Nothing like six-line arrogance. It's like, well, it's not worth coming to learn that old rot. So I would just get the belt and not go. I was okay. You can do that. It's my body, but it's not going to make any difference. So that was in me since a very young age. And actually, I have to give gratitude to my mother also, who's obviously a fiery Scot, and stood for things that at a time was very challenging for her to do that in a small place that we lived. But I feel like I can only stay true to my experience. And I see a road in front of me, if you like, and it's not written in stone, but there is a possibility, a potential, a hope. Because I feel like at the heart of many of us on this planet, there is loving kindness, there is a willingness. And it's difficult to, as often in my life, I have been called all kinds of names. Oh, she's away with the fairies. Oh, don't talk to her about that. She'll set her off, or all of these things. Because what I'm going to talk about, it's not the norm, or it's more the norm now. And I talk about it anywhere. It's like I don't pretend to be somebody else. It's like, so I hear something, and I hear certain comments, and sometimes I'm just there and I'm listening and I don't say anything, and it's okay. And there are other moments where it's like, well, actually, that's not my experience. There are certain things that there's a border. I'm not going to stand for. uh, One of my things is, that in my life I've often met racism in different ways, and it's really hard for me. And I'm also aware that I'm in a Caucasian form, and unconscious racism is probably everywhere, and I have to apologize maybe up front that I don't even know that it's there. But when I hear certain things, they're like, oh my God, we live on a round planet. We're all divine children. We are multicolored and all kinds of experiences on this great planet of choice, that education is everywhere and wherever you want to find it. So I'm not able to stand in that. I will just say, actually, that's not my experience. In fact, there are times, and this is reversed, maybe racism. God, I can't believe I'm having this conversation. However, there are times where, because of where I live, when I'm in Asia or in a big city, I feel like, oh, how relaxing, because I live in a little island and there's not a lot of different kind of culture. And it's just like when I go to Asia or London or some big city somewhere, it's like, ah, yeah, the world lives here. And I've a couple of times had to be in the local hospital here at Caboolture, and it's a training hospital. And a few years ago, my appendix was on the almost bursting, and I was there, and they were saying, "How can you be so smiley?" And I said, "Because look, the world's here. because you go into a hospital and there's every nationality that you could imagine that is there, and it's rich, and you hear the accent, and it's like, oh my God, it's so delicious. It's like, oh yeah, that's right, I'm part of the world. So yeah, there are certain things where I can't just stand by and hear it, and there are other times where I'm just listening to the conversation, but in my heart there is a commitment to actualization, liberation, freedom. And freedom is, again, so many things are misunderstood. But where were we taught? I'm going to go back to that children at school. We weren't taught to cooperate. We weren't taught to be friends with each other. We had to hide our arms and write the answer ourselves. We couldn't ask our mate, how do we get to that answer? Or all these little cliques in the playground, and then I see children now, and that's not the truth. That's not there. They're playing together, they're curious about each other. I mean, I don't think it matters where you live in the world now. There is different foods everywhere, and I think food is a great way for people to come together to learn about each other's culture, even in small, tiny little ways.
Oh my God, talking about love, Tanmayo, an embodiment of love, we're about to dive in super deep into the great change that is happening on the planet right now, and also how love, practical love, and all the different challenges in which love fractically, I just made up a word, fractically and practically doesn't show up in our world. My goodness, this is about to get super deep. So, just before we get there and you get engrossed in the conversation, I just wanted to take a moment to thank all of you that are subscribed to the channel. Everything you see here at the Inspired Evolution, which I'm still just like, what the actual is going on? Oh my God, is powered and empowered by your subscription to this channel. And you have done that, you've subscribed. Thank you so much for your incredible love and support. It is not lost on me. I'm so humbled by your love. And to those of you that are new to the channel or potentially watching this third, fourth, fifth video and not yet subscribed to the channel, please do take a moment. As I'm saying the word subscribe, it is lighting up below me on the device that you're on. Please hit that subscribe button, hit the bell notification icon. 2 videos like this come out twice a week. Profound conversations to help promote positivity around the world, sharing in the wisdom, and just, yeah, it's just such a blessing to be able to be in these conversations with you. I take a lot of note of the comments you leave below and try to ask those questions the next time the guest comes on. So yeah, hopefully you'll take a moment to subscribe. And yeah, I thank you deeply for doing so. And to all of you that are subscribed, my goodness, thank you so much. Without too much further ado, back to Tanmayo. I wanted to double click for a sec there, at the risk of turning this into a conspiracy cleanup podcast. there was a piece there that you mentioned, which I think, part of my soul just couldn't just sort of glance over, because I actually had a similar experience in the past where, us and them, and it's just such an, I think the mind in and of itself also loves that program to, as an ego structure, to sort of just hook into. It's just so readily available. I think we're very primed, just because of our evolution and where we've come from, for that story and that narrative, to be aware and on guard of it. That the conspiracy conversations tend to lean into that, quite insidiously, actually, to some degree. And you mentioned that, that's not my experience. I love the way you even just frame that when you're in around people, that it's like, actually, it's not you're wrong, I'm right. It's just, that's not my experience. How loving and kind already that is, to find a point of reference that is loving and kind, which is actually, oh no, that's different to my experience. I think that I just wanted to double click on that, because yeah, and then you went on to say to focus on what is within your control, and what is in your space. Because I remember being down the conspiracy rabbit hole, and it was pretty gnarly. Like, it was a pretty depressing place to be. And then, like, after a good 12 odd, sometime after that, I had to come back and do a whole body of integration work onto myself. It's like, okay, not everything is out to get you. That like build your relationship. And it was literally building from the elements ground up. It was like earth, water, wind, and fire. Like that's literally what I had to strip it back to, Tanmaya. It was like, my water is healthy, my water is good for me. Take big, long, deep breaths, spend some time with your feet in the earth, good, eat good, natural food, and just spend some time in the sun and cultivate your passions. But and now I know even as I'm saying that, it just sounds so
Hmm.
simple and so mundane. And yet, when you're so far out into these ego structures, that can be the place that really brings you back to your spiritual home.
I agree, and I feel that, you know, overall, when I've experienced it myself and when I've heard it in others, I don't feel joy, you know, because all the energy's outside talking about the situation. So the energy that you need, you know, the universal life force that can nourish you is all flowing out to what's wrong. You know, and I can remember at some point in my, I was married for a long time, 22 years or something. And I remember going through a certain breakthrough, I guess, that would have been pretty obvious for anybody else looking on, where I realized, oh my God, I am so dissatisfied. And that dissatisfaction was easy to hook into all of what's not okay on the planet, or, you know, anything and everywhere. And it's not to say that it is okay, but I can't fix out there, but I can come back in here. I can bring all my energy home. And the biggest reality check for myself was I realized, oh my goodness, I am fueling energetically the very things that I think are not okay. I'm feeding them every day instead of thinking, okay, how does that help the collective field? That doesn't help. And it certainly doesn't help my organs. I love what you said. It doesn't, the water in my body is, how is it going to be? How is my liver and my gallbladder? And where's my fire? That's, you know, is that how I really want to use my life force? And what I found also after a while, this dissatisfaction, it was in my relationship. You know, that poor man, I don't know that he could ever have been, you know, okay. Because in that dissatisfaction, I didn't understand at that time that what I was seeking, no man, no lover, no, no relationship could ever provide. So, you know, I was kind of on my own in a no man's land in a way, with nobody around me at that stage that was doing the seeking. But of course, slowly I found others and was attracted to classes or education or learning, or until I started all of these habits, these behaviors started to break down that were leaking all over the planet, and hostility and aggressive and resentful and all of these things. And I thought, oh my God, do I really want to live my life like that? This is what I'm putting my energy into. And it shifted, because that's not the real me. That's a conditioned self. And I thought, oh my God, I am a living construct. I am walking about thinking I'm whatever, but actually I'm just doing blah, 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 that the parents did, or the culture did, or the conspiracy theory did, or, and suddenly there was this awareness of, oh, I'm feeding the very things that I long to see change. And that's when, you know, I like the, you know, Richard talks about the pivot in Gene Keys, and for me, I like the double pointed arrow. You know, the arrow goes out, all your energy is going out to that thing that is attracting your attention. It can be a joyful thing or a not so joyful thing. All your energy's there. There's no energy at home. Now, I started to get really ill because obviously in the end I'm using primal life force. I'm not aligned. My soul is not present in this. This is a psychological construct. Although your soul is always present, it's weaving its way to bring you back. So I needed to restate that. But overall, that I could see that wow, all my attention is out there and there's a story about it. And suddenly the arrow bounces back. The arrow goes out and then the arrow bounces back, which is, this double pointed arrow. And when the arrow bounces back, I guess it's a bit like the pivot, but for me, it's more pointed in that it's like, oh, what am I doing with my precious life here?
Hey there, inspired soul. I just wanted to take out a quick second to ask you, what would be a question that you would have loved to ask Tanmayo in today's podcast? I know there are so many wisdom carriers watching these podcasts with me that I know there is some really profound questions waiting for you to ask. So leave those in the comments below, and next time Tanmayo or Richard Rudd from Gene Keys comes on, I will ask your question. And yeah, if there's any other insights that you're particularly getting from this episode, I'd love to hear from you in the comment section below. As it stands at the moment, I don't get the opportunity to write back to all of the comments, but I do read all of them. So yeah, trust and rest assured, touchwood, that I will see your comment and will do my best to get back to it. Without too much further ado, back to Tanmayo. I do wonder, because similar to you, it taught me a lot, even though it was trial by fire, about the potency of attention, actually, and just what a sacred gift our attention actually really is. And we think it's just like this lens thing, but actually there's a lot of giving and receiving that goes on just through that faculty alone.
I agree. It's like really watching where, and it's attention. It's like some friends and I, we talk about attention units of attention. Where are your attention units? And and sometimes you have to gather them up and bring them all home and realize how much energy is there and there and there and there and also there was a big teaching for me, and I'm going to go back to the difference between emotional melodrama and the potency of feeling the wisdom that's underneath that. And I would see how easily I would get caught up in other people's stories, and then before I know it, I'm in their story, and now I'm giving them advice, which they never asked for, by the way. Suddenly how to fix another divine being. I mean, truly, if there's anything that is a gift to myself, it would have to be that. As I watched myself, I thought, oh my God, what am I doing? There's a divine being in there walking a soul path, and how exquisite it must be, even although for me it might be terrifying, but it's not my path. And I learned through some very wise women that I met along the way, including some Native American grandmothers, that I got some pretty powerful teachings from, like a puppy who got a smack on the nose, which was excruciatingly embarrassing, but has served me well. And I watched myself and I thought, oh, this is. In fact, I really felt like it was really arrogant. Why would I have any idea what that person needs? And it also came to me in different ways because, I've worked with people for a long time. And one of the things that is the most difficult, I think, or the most challenging when you've got somebody in front of you and you're highly intuitive or aware, you can see what the issue is. But what they're presenting has nothing to do with the issue. So I would try and weave them over here to get to this issue, which sometimes would bear fruit, but often there would just be this blank look as nothing. What? Not, I mean, I wouldn't do it in a way that was so obvious, but I thought, wow, this is really interesting. And I realized that my role is to mirror back what's being presented. And that thing over here that I can see, I don't know what they need before that unravels. They might need 10 meetings. They might need all kinds of incidents and situations that are going to gather in all kinds of sustenance, beautiful qualities of essence are going to start streaming in their body with those little insights here and there and breakthroughs. And some of them might be devastating to that soul. But through it all, they will come to a real sense of integral wholeness through making their journey. And I started to realize it's not my job to pull that thread. It hasn't been presented. And they might I might meet them, and they might work with me for a long time and say, "You talked about this." And I will say, "Yes, but so what?" It's so that can be really another respect that I would say that I've learned to. Of course, when people ask me, I can talk in a way that about the situation, but ultimately they're living it. And the only difference between some of us who are guides or whatever we want to call us, Scottish witches that you come across in your time, is that, and I say this often, I only get to sit here with you because I've fallen down enough holes myself. I know how painful and sorrowful it can be when I'm so far away from the love that is really wanting to take up space in my inner house. It's and so sometimes it's a case of somebody will ask, I'm like, well, you I'll be here, and I know that there's something going on there. They know they shouldn't go in that door, and hey, I know this well. You shouldn't go in that door, but it's like gleaming magnet. You just have to go in that door because you cannot avoid the experience. Life is about experiencing. And once you're in the experience, you can say to yourself, oh God, I knew I shouldn't get in here, but you're here now. And if you're lucky, you've got people around you who are just going to hold space for you. And instead of, we told you not to go in there, you know, it's like, and it's through those experiences that we learn, that the wisdom comes, that the clarity appears. We get to know ourselves. We get to know, oh, that's what attracted me there. It was delicious. But what I needed was this part of me needed to be fed. And actually it's not being fed, but I didn't know that I needed that yet. So and there's all kind we could talk about that in a million ways, but it's so marvelous, especially if you're with a friend and your friend knows, and then we both look at each other and grin and go, yeah, you just can't avoid the experience. That right there is what happens with enough contemplation or inquiry. You just get to like yourself better. You know that you are just the person you are, and some days you're ranting about goodness knows what, but it doesn't have the same energy because the hostility and the them and us is not there. But there are times when I watch what's going on in the world and I think about, maybe all the refugees. And I think, gosh, we are refugees from our hearts. I remember in whatever, 7 years ago, when the Star Pearl was being, um, it was its first entrance into the world, and we were all in Findhorn. And there was a group of us with Richard that had been studying it for 9 months. So we were prepared. And now it's like, now when it's released, now it's like this extraordinary experience that's grown out of that beta test 7 years ago. So I'm kind of really excited about that too. But I remember being in the room one day and something happening, and I just heard these words. Yes, we're refugees from our hearts. Where, and I remember hearing some speakers that I've listened to recently talking about a lot of what they feel is going on in the body and the replication of cells that are not good for us is because we're no longer connected. We're not as connected to the earth and the elements as we used to be. that sensory presence has got entangled with this emotionality, or people that are, oh yes, but I'm intuitive, never having the thought, what happens when you're wrong? Nobody thinks their intuition's wrong. And I just think, oh my goodness, hello, you know? And I in Findhorn community that some of you may know about, and there's a game that was created there, I don't know, must be 30 something years ago now, maybe 40, called the Transformation Game. And there's this beautiful deck, and it has setbacks and insights and angels and blessings. It's gorgeous. 4 people can play. And in the community, they used to hold a 4-day game with 5 people playing. It was really intense. And one of the cards was you had to choose, you landed on a intuitive flash, and you had to choose whether you were going to use your intuition, you were going to use your will, or you were going to choose a setback, an angel, an insight. And if it was correct, the intuitive flash came up. And if it was incorrect, it was brought pain. And it was really shocking to me and many others to say, oh, my intuition was wrong. It's like we're not in tune enough with ourselves to know what is guidance or perception or intuition.
Hi there, guys. I wanted to take a quick moment just to introduce you to my one-to-one coaching. It's something that I deeply love doing. As you can tell, conscious conversation is such a massive part of my life. And having one-to-one, deep, meaningful conversations with people where I get to show up as your brother or as the coach or as your mentor has been such a gift for me personally, and a gift for lots of the people that I have supported on the journey of living a more spiritually empowered, spiritually powered, spiritually aligned life. You don't have to take my word for it. Here's some examples of people all around the world that have experienced profound transformations through this coaching experience.
Amrit is a fantastic coach.
In a few sessions, he got to a depth that I'd only experienced before working with certain medicines.
He's gone through a lot of the struggles that you're probably facing, and Amrit's been a really strong, supportive figure in my journey.
In control of myself.
I'm kinder to myself.
I actually have that vision and a purpose.
I do feel like I'm a better version of myself already.
Amazing energy.
He was easy to talk to, which made me easy to trust him.
Working with Amrit at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and really I was bouncing out of bed.
Whenever I get off the calls with Amrit, best money we've ever spent.
I would not recommend him because I don't want everyone to know about him, and then I won't be able to book him. If he gets too busy, I won't get my turn.
I would say absolutely.
There's no way you can work with Amrit for a period of time without being transformed.
So if you're considering him as a coach, do not hesitate, because you won't be disappointed.
Alrighty, so hopefully that's inspiring your evolution onwards and upwards. And if you are so inspired to evolve, you can book in a one-to-one call with me directly at www.amrit.coach/life. And guys, if I can say so myself, I do think this is something quite special. Most people that I see building things online don't really work with people this deeply, this intimately, one-on-one as things start to grow, just because it is so time intensive. And yet I'm so deeply passionate about the transformation that comes from one-to-one coaching that just isn't available anywhere else. It would be my absolute honor and a pleasure to support your spiritual awakening, your spiritual path, your spiritual unfoldment. It is my life's work. I look forward to seeing you in the call. Back to today's podcast. You mentioned a fine line between ignorance and innocence. And you also mentioned that it was a practice to carry loving kindness and to believe that there's loving kindness in everyone's heart. There's a dance in between those 2 points, which I'll find it very difficult to articulate, but I'd love to just sort of open up a space in between. Yeah, just those of us that are trying to see the beauty in everyone's heart, and it being a practice, because practice takes work. And then also, like the fine line between ignorance and innocence, and yet trying to embrace the innocence and trying not to be ignorant through it all. My God.
I feel like, when I look at many people that I know, one of the ways that I came to really see this is many years ago, actually. Maybe I was in my 30s at the time. And there was a conversation happening in my home, and it was with my ex-husband and my mom and a couple of other people. And I realized that the reality for them, I'm going to talk about reality rather than truth, because we're only in the truth of the reality that we're experiencing today, if I did make a wee statement about that. So a certain authority has been given, over your health, the doctor, the lawyer, the teacher, all these professional roles. And they know better than you. The priest, oh my God, let's not get started there.
The bigger the lectern, the bigger the clipboard, the bigger the coat.
So we've been streamlined into these beliefs. And some of us have stepped out and said, hang on a minute, that there's more. It's not that those are not valuable. I mean, if you've got a broken leg, you need the doctor. If your appendix is about to go, you need the hospital. So it's not either or, but it's horses for courses. You don't take the Budweiser horses to a racetrack. That doesn't work. But it's expanding our perception. And at the time, I was a practicing kinesiologist. I did a lot of kinesiology in my life. And I had some clients that were, and I never called anybody a patient, because I feel like it takes your own innate wisdom and intelligence to seek out something beyond what you've been told is the only way. So that was important for me. And they were treating them. They were treating themselves in different ways, and it was cancer. And here in Australia, that you may be aware of, and one of the most successful institutes was right here in Australia. He went through powerful protocols and to bring about this cancer being in remission. And I mean, I'm talking about a long time ago, but these people were getting great success with, but the level of change that they had to make had to be a soulful commitment, because for many people it was too big. And I remember somebody like, I can't remember, it might even have been, I'll think of his name in a minute, talking about this. He wrote several books, doctor, that of the people that came to look for solutions and care and healing in a way that might have been alongside or separate from the traditional, I'm not going to say traditional, mainstream model. Out of all the people that came, there was maybe 50% that were willing to really follow the protocols that were required, and maybe an even smaller percentage again that went all the way through. Because it's such a big ask to change your life, your eating habits, what you're doing every day. So I was listening to this group of people, and they just thought I was crazy talking about this. That can't happen. Those people will all die, and it's all nonsense and whatever. And I realized in that moment, that is the line, innocence and ignorance, because they have been taught and have seen what's provided. And that's what's needed if you want to be well. And you shouldn't be informing people of other things. Whereas I want to be informed of everything so that I can make an informed choice. And my first stop is often the doctor. I want the tests. I want his advice. I've got a great doctor. I respect him. I want to hear what he has to say. And then I will feel like, what is the choice I'm going to make about this for myself? And I think for many people, that is the border. It can seem ignorant, but I just I'm blessed. I feel blessed that questioning happened in me, and it was there, as we heard, at a very young age. But maybe collectively we're not all here to wake up. Maybe that person that drives me the most crazy is an angel. They're maybe there to be exactly the person that gets up my nose, so that I can see if I'm actually if I'm really able to be loving, it's easy to love when there's loving experiences all around me. But what when it's the opposite, when it's something that is really hard to deal with? Can I still find that sweet place, that place that goes, oh, this is challenging and I don't agree with anything that I'm hearing, and it's not my journey. My journey is to say, that's not my experience.
Okay, so we've been discussing thus far the great change that's underway and potentially some of the obstacles to love that we feel as a collective and individually. So, but I've heard you say there is, well, the soul to love. And I thought that was really interesting way to sort of, because I got a concept around soul and I got a connection to soul. And I got a concept around love, got a connection to love. Okay, good. Solid felt sense. Good. But then the soul of love.
I feel like in this world that I've been born into anyway, there's so many ideas about love. And for me, it's this deep, abiding expression of existence that moves through every moment of presence. And it's tangible and it has substance and it has many dimensions and colors. And it's an emanation from our subtle field. I'm just going to, for simplicity's sake, for the soul of life. And the soul is complex. It's like I've come to see that there's a complexity that's not just in the muddle of mind and emotion and all of that. There's a richness to what is being attracted. If we play in Venus, of course, we've got that unconscious moon in our attractor field. And it's like, it took me a long time to really sense the power of that unconscious moon that's in design 88 degrees before we were born. This unconscious moon is what is there in our attractor field. And of course, everything that we're playing with here is an agreed upon reality. That's all we're doing. We're playing with agreed upon realities. Now, somebody else comes along and says, oh no, I like this. I like it over here. I want to do Vedic astrology or some other kind, and it'll come out differently. Your chart will be different. And for me, it's like, I think that's wonderful. I think you should absolutely go for it and do that. Or somebody else says, oh no, Enneagram is the only way home, or medicine. Let's all go to medicine circles. And ayahuasca and all of these things that of course nobody can go to because they're against the law. But somehow around the world, people are going to Peru and all kinds of places so that they can experience these things. And for me, that's the Devas. The Devic kingdom has said, hey, they need help. Humans are in trouble. We need to do something here. But the field is opening up. Of course, that there are places and people who are going to abuse that blessed sacredness. But predominantly, that's not, I think, what's happening around the world. People are seeking healing. They want to be free from this closed mental patterns. So there's many things that are opening up around us. And for me, that's there's the soul of the world. It's not just an individual experience. There's the collective soul, the soul of the world, the Maha koans also that we can engage with and open to. There's so much more that every year that passes, I look back and think, well, I was awakening then, and I was open to this and that then, and I was aware of that then. And now it's like this boundlessness. And every person that has that, whatever insight they have, whatever soulful emanation they're experiencing, and I see that the soul, I'm just going to say it like this. I know it's simple. And we could go into the 7 bodies and what it's all about and the rays and the colors and the dimensions of love. Because the dimensions of love are just like, oh, I'm lost already. But there's a soulful quality before we have 64 archetypes. Let's put it like that. That emanates through this archetypes. So, like Richard talks about it recently as the golden thread. And for me, the gold dimension and the threads that it weaves is extraordinary. And years ago I don't know, 1990 or 91 or 92, I don't remember, I was in India and I was fascinated by Father Bede Griffith. And one of the first things I read was his autobiography, and it was called The Golden String. And, it's like I started to see how my life has been woven in a way. And I love this quote that's maybe going to drive a lot of people nuts, which is, in the end, there is no choice. And I think it was maybe Krishnamurti who said that. And until you really experience that, it sounds like, well, that's a load of old cobblers. I like choosing. I'm always choosing, but there is some quality that occurs that brings laughter to me that is, in the end, there is no choice. And that's been alive in me a long time. And it makes me laugh. It's like I feel like I'm in a great cosmic play that I can either be bogged down by utter seriousness. And there are times that happens where I don't want to get out of bed today. I'm under the covers. I can't bear to watch what people are doing to each other. And then I remember, hey, I'm a people. How often am I not as kind as I wish I could have been in that moment? How many times did I say horrible words to somebody that I actually loved? How many times did I undermine someone, when I wasn't feeling so great about myself? Just because it's not happening today. And I'm not saying that you need to dig up your past forever, but I think it's maybe in the Bible is something like, this is not the right quote, but it's about stop looking at the splinter in your brother's eye when you have a log in your own. So that these things touch me deeply, or don't people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, all that. They're just little cliches, but they have wisdom. So there are times for me where it is challenging to keep going and say, oh, wow, it's, when things are so awry. But yet, there is this spark of light. And I can't get away from it. It is the very essence of being, space and light. I am condensed space. That's all I am. As we sit here in these body forms, the breath of God just, or goddess, or existence, or the beloved, whatever we want to call it, just benevolent consciousness breathed out. And on that out breath came these amazing objects and this biology, this spacesuit, this breath that goes with it, and I just sometimes sit here and I feel solid space at times. I'm just a condensed spaceship, really. Water, think of all the water. And I was talking about the unconscious moon. There is so much water in this body, and that moon, like I didn't sleep last night. I've been awake since about, I don't know, before midnight, and I've been awake all day. And it's like, I just go out and look at her because surrender. That's all I'm able to do. And I feel that impetus of the ocean that's actually a wave in my body. And for you human design people, I am not solar plexus to find. But I sense that we don't have to be, it's useful to use all these models. It doesn't matter what model you're in. Each model attracts the fractal that most needs that journey, who is dedicated to that journey. They're going to find their freedom and their liberation in that journey. And so for me, Gene Keys is part of that. It's like looking at Richard that day all those years ago was, that young man is seeded and it's for the future. But it's in me because I recognize it. And it's in every person that's heard the call. It's already in us. And so for me, part of that word soul is care of the soul, to realize you're here now. You don't have to wait for next incarnation or for the children to come. These elders are going to be the children to come. It's like, be careful when you're just talking about elders. It's never too late to take that loving breath. And if incarnation is really true for you, or I don't think it's the personality, but I meet people and I know them immediately. There's a soul signature. It's like, oh, there you are. That soul signature. I even sat on a plane many years ago next to somebody and we had to talk because we immediately disliked each other. It was fascinating. And we talked on this way from Brisbane to Melbourne, and they said, okay, where do we know each other from? And of course, we started to track. We could call it past lives, we can call it interdimensional reality, we can call it ancestral memory, but we both had a clear picture of where we were and with the trouble that we got in. And it allowed us, at the very least, to have a pleasant plane ride. But we didn't want to know each other after that. There was too much history there. It's like, yeah, next incarnation, maybe. But there's but there's a soul signature. And care of the soul, I feel, is just, it comes to a certain point of your life where all of these things that we learn, archetypes and gene keys and human designs and astrologies, and they're all just divine playmates. And ultimately, we can lay them all down because it's our breath, our attention to the moment, the simplicity of simply being present with what is. And our suffering genuinely and generally happens because we're not able to be present with what is. Because very often what is confronts the beliefs and the sacred cows that we hold dear, and they're too big. So we need time. And in time, it will become clear. But very often it brings suffering with it because we're not really paying attention to what is. And to do so, we need to build capacity, especially the capacity to hold ourselves emotionally and be strong enough within ourselves to be transparent. And we can only be intimate and transparent if we're not identified with an image of who we think we should be. So I recall, I don't know if it was maybe in the Pearl, and Richard had met somebody who was having an affair, and he had a conversation, and I heard myself saying, he's identified with an image that his wife holds of him. And as soon as he owns up to what's happening, that image will be destroyed. And it's unbearable for him to realize how destructive that is going to be for him and her. That he's broken a vow, a bond. But that's the reality of what's happened. It's not to make him wrong. It's not about blame. The soul is on a journey, and sometimes the only way it comes to its own fruition and revelation and actualization is through things that bring deep sorrow, and love and grief and sorrow are often companions. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna highlight that point, that the grief and love piece being interwoven and is quite profound when you lose someone and you start to realize that your grief is just all the extra love that you had left over and you couldn't really get it out in time. And there's a lot of, I shouldn't swear, it's my podcast, but fuck. There is a connection there, because my question was going to be, how does understanding love in this way impact our experience of life? But you've been speaking to it, but I think I feel called to ask the question nonetheless.
I feel for me these days, and that's been a long time coming. So I feel that whatever I'm experiencing, the end of any relationship, unless it's absolutely terrible and you're dancing down the street with your bottle of champagne, the chances are there's a grieving process. Somewhere you loved that person. Might not have been, there is not real love and unreal love. There is only what you're experiencing and able to hold in this moment. But at the end of any relationship, and today I think for many people, we walk together for a time. You're lucky if you walk together for the whole of your life. But many of us are here, I feel like we're already in the 55 in a way, where this 59, 55 has such a holy dance for me. I mean, I was giving workshops on intimacy and freedom before I met Richard or so anything of Gene Keys. So it was just natural for me. It's like, oh my God, this is everything that I love about the inner journey, mapped out with a map and a compass, that people can find their way, they can be empowered. I just found it incredibly exciting. And remember, there was no book or compass at that time when I met him, but I knew there would be. It was obvious. It had to be. These were going to go shh. So I just was one of the people that seeded across the planet everywhere I was. Who's this guy you keep talking about? Oh, don't worry, you'll know eventually. It was like that. And people who know me went, oh, it's just, except 20 years later, like I used to say to my brother, one day you'll be buying water, it'll be dearer than your beer. Oh God, sis, you talk a lot of rubbish. You know, or these things that we know, but they don't make sense at the time. Bless him. He also is very sweet to me and reminds me of things that I have said that have been valuable to him, which is really nice. It's like I wasn't always just that. But I feel like when we're talking about love, the more we build capacity for loving, the more we can hold the grief. And it can be, terrible things happen, not just the ending of relationships, but your parents leave, your siblings leave, your friends leave, your children leave. And I think that it has got to be one of the most sorrowful places where grieving is part of the loving process. It's like an honoring. And yes, people say, oh, you're just grieving for yourself. I don't think that's true. There's a deep bond and a connection there that there's I could speak about that for a longer time, which is not for now. But I feel like they temper us in some way to these grieving processes and these sorrowful moments. They're the pearl, the jewels that we are. I think about how we like to wear gold and we like to wear pearls, or we like to wear silver or emeralds, and we don't realize those are the colors of love. They live in the subtle field. We look at great cathedrals. What are they showing us? What do we find in the inner planes? What are they standing for? But they've been twisted in a little way to be beyond us. rather than see that those powerful experiences bring us the grounding that we need. Even these six-line beings who never really wanted to put their tippy toes on the planet for a long time, suddenly finding yourself, I mean, just in love with humanity, which is what sits in that attractor field for me. And if anybody had told me that, there have been different times in my life, I would have thought, what? I want to send them all off somewhere else. And now I want to gather them all up. And my favorite thing is, because obviously I'm a Trekkie, not obviously, but I am, is resistance is futile. You will be assimilated. Because love is, love you can't help yourself. It's dangerous and treacherous, and we don't trust, and yet the faith it takes to fall. And it's only after the falling that the rising can happen, that the maturity can come. But again and again, we either closet ourselves up, or before we know it, that magic, that chemistry, that soulful need is attracted to whatever it is. It can be your profession. But I think the 55 is bringing us to a point now where there are lots of single people, gorgeous, beautiful people of all ages who are not coupled up. And it's not that they're not available or that they are, but that communion of the other is needing maybe spaciousness and intimacy to know what it is to be in love and aloneness by yourself. And that's quite a journey, because it goes through loneliness and longing until something becomes strong within. That vulnerability becomes a tensile strength that it's like bamboo, and yet it's there. It's like solid, like the oak tree, and yet it's moving like ants. It's not stuck in one place. So all of these experiences just bring me to this, the colors of love, the dimensions of love, the flames of love, and the qualities of the difference of the sweetness or the passion. It's not either or, but there's substance that weaves through your body like golden threads or emerald tapestries, or the vitality of the red, you know. So that's what lights me up.
You've got an opportunity for people to go a little bit deeper, actually, into the exploration of love as a living flame. You're actually, running an event in Colorado soon. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about the event, and then we can ask some questions leading into love as a living flame as well. Yeah.
It's being sponsored by a beautiful man called Jesse Chestnut, that I'm sure you all know from Guides, and he has his own company. So I'm invited to be a speaker, and of course, that's acceptable. And Richard, before I'm ever doing what I'm doing, Richard is doing 2 days in the Gaia sphere on incarnation codes. So that's going to be very exciting. He's been working with it for a while, how he's going to present that. And Elijah's been doing some amazing graphics, as you can imagine, for the 2-day. And then Gaia TV are going to make that into 4 segments that will be on the Gaia spot. But actually, Richard's been interviewed twice before for Gaia, and those just haven't quite hit the airwaves yet. So he's very much in demand, and becoming more so, because his way of expressing the great change is so unique to him, as a bard. And I think we need people that we can relate to, that is, he's got his own family business, the Jinkies business, his kids, his wife. He's living all the things that we all live, and still living into this transmission that he's bringing through. So he's doing these 2 days. And then at a meeting that we all had in Scotland, somebody said to Maya, why don't you do a day after Richard? And Richard said, yes, a day on love. So, and the beautiful thing about this is that we did a little 5 minute sort of podcast thing that I don't know where it is. And we haven't talked about what he's doing, and we haven't. I mean, I've got an insight, and he's seen a very broad strokes of what I was going to bring. And when we started talking, it was just like looking at each other, going, "Yeah, we're receiving whatever we are from a stream of consciousness that is unique to each of us." But I can see there's a weaving. So for the people that are coming from that 2 day to spend a day with me, they will get a lovely integration process perhaps. And there are some people that are only coming to spend the day because, it's a stretch to do all the things financially, and they realize that there will be streaming. I guess at some point they'll get to see it on Gaia, and we can't do all the things all the time, but I'm really looking forward to it. It feels like such a sweet way to spend the day with gorgeous people.
Hi there, guys. I wanted to take a quick moment just to introduce you to my one-to-one coaching. It's something that I deeply love doing. As you can tell, conscious conversation is such a massive part of my life. And having one-to-one, deep, meaningful conversations with people where I get to show up as your brother or as the coach or as your mentor has been such a gift for me personally, and a gift for lots of the people that I have supported on the journey of living a more spiritually empowered, spiritually powered, spiritually aligned life. You don't have to take my word for it. Here's some examples of people all around the world that have experienced profound transformations through this coaching experience.
Amrit is a fantastic coach.
In a few sessions, he got to a depth that I'd only experienced before working with certain medicines.
He's gone through a lot of the struggles that you're probably facing, and Amrit's been a really strong, supportive figure in my journey.
In control of myself.
I'm kinder to myself.
I actually have that vision and a purpose.
I do feel like I'm a better version of myself already.
Amazing energy.
He was easy to talk to, which made me easy to trust him.
Working with Amrit at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and really I was bouncing out of bed.
Whenever I get off the calls with Amrit, best money we've ever spent.
I would not recommend him because I don't want everyone to know about him, and then I won't be able to book him. If he gets too busy, I won't get my turn.
I would say absolutely.
There's no way you can work with Amrit for a period of time without being transformed.
So if you're considering him as a coach, do not hesitate, because you won't be disappointed.
Alrighty, so hopefully that's inspiring your evolution onwards and upwards. And if you are so inspired to evolve, you can book in a one-to-one call with me directly at www.amrit.coach/life. And guys, if I can say so myself, I do think this is something quite special. Most people that I see building things online don't really work with people this deeply, this intimately, one-on-one as things start to grow, just because it is so time intensive. And yet I'm so deeply passionate about the transformation that comes from one-to-one coaching that just isn't available anywhere else. It would be my absolute honor and a pleasure to support your spiritual awakening, your spiritual path, your spiritual unfoldment. It is my life's work. I look forward to seeing you in the call. Back to today's podcast. There's so many open threads still left in this conversation around love as well. And I guess I am conscious of the precious time we have together. I don't want to use the word dissatisfaction, but it is a word you used earlier. Spiritual longing is probably the word I wanted to use. Love and our journey, you mentioned it almost as in love without the object, and it wasn't connected to a feeling anymore. It's like that my goosebumps just went when you said that. It was just, I think I'm looking for a question around love and self, love and the other, and love and ultimately divinity. But I just wanted to sort of open that up and make sure the conversation had that in there today.
For most people, when they start off on this journey, we don't recognize ourselves as seekers. We just know that we're looking for something, we don't know what it is, or we're in trouble in our relationships or our health or our mental health or our professions, something draws us somewhere. And before we know it, we can't stop. Because each moment that there is an insight or a breakthrough, there's an awareness of, oh, I feel differently about that today than I did yesterday. That's not true for me anymore. That's not the reality I'm living in. And slowly there's a reality that comes that we are a seeker, but we don't realize that what we're seeking is ourselves. That we are the biggest mystery to ourselves. And that I could only use the word dissatisfaction in the beginning because I realized that I was dissatisfied with everything. In part, I had a moment many years ago in my early 30s where I woke up and I thought, you know what? I've got all the things that should make me happy. I've got a lovely husband. He's handsome and gorgeous. And I have a beautiful home. My son is healthy and happy. I've got cars at the door. We ski and we sail. We go on holidays. I don't have to think about anything. I spent 11 years riding horses. What a privileged life. And then there was this, well, what the hell is wrong with me? I am the most ungrateful person because something's not right. And then suddenly I realized if this is all there is, I don't want it anymore. I mean, how many holidays and cars, and I watched the cycle of when things were not fulfilling, there would be a thing, a shopping day, a nice dinner, a new car, a holiday, something that would fill that void until one day nothing could fill it. And I was literally on the floor in my house and said, okay, teach me, because this cannot be all that there is. I was so bereft. I mean, I was in my own, in my home, in floods of tears, thinking there has to be more than this. And I'd read enough books, but I don't think they had really penetrated in certain ways. There are moments that I can talk about where I was so awake. And it was kind of like that awake and asleep, but the awake was always there. That inquiry was always there until eventually I realized I'm looking for communion with the divine. That was it. And I spent a long time, breathing in and out of samadhi. Tell me what samadhi is. That's all I long. I long for samadhi. And it took me on a journey of life that cost me a lot. It cost my relationship, it cost my marriage. And if I had the wisdom I have now, that might not have been the truth. But I didn't have that wisdom. I was ferocious. I have to know. Nothing else mattered after that. Houses and cars and all of those things, they didn't matter to me. Whereas I think we're in a time now where there's more possibility to be stable in your life. I was not that one. I needed to break down everything to get out and find whatever this is that I was looking for. And it took me to India many times and 20 days of silent meditation and darkroom retreats and 21 days of koan practice and all kinds of things, that codependency workshops and and rebirthing, all the things that people are doing now. They repeat themselves, except they're refined also in some ways. So it's not. So sometimes, given the right opportunity, and this is one of the things I love about Venus sequence, is many people, their relationships flourish in Venus sequence rather than split. Now, of course, some people need to go their separate ways, and I think that's important. But there are many roads here. The journey to love and aloneness that takes you through that deep longing. If first of all, it's longing for the other, the partner, the mate, and then it becomes this longing for the divine. And I think Richard even writes about that, in that, where he talks about divine dissatisfaction. And so that there was something in him when I met him that I knew, okay, this is soul stuff. This is fractal. There's no getting away from this, because in the end, there is no choice.
So that to say, by the sounds of things, the great change, it definitely happened, and we probably make it through it by the sounds of things if there is no choice, or it doesn't matter if we make it through or not because there is no choice.
I think it's already happened. It takes time. I mean, it's happening in all the planes of reality. That's my reality. It's happening in all the dimensions of reality. And here on 3D, the most, we are matter, so we are solid space. It takes time. And of course, lots of avatars can leave anytime they want. But there is something about we're gathering up the fractal. All of these different ways that are being offered for consciousness on the planet is gathering up the fractal. Will we return to this biological spacesuit form? Is there a finer form? I don't know the answer to that. But I feel that there is a kind of parting of the ways that's happening in some way that is, I'm done with, it's like, well, I'm never going to be done, but I'd love to see us live on a beautiful green land where we're not still killing bodies and stealing children and having these dreadful behaviors. But maybe that's part of the evolutionary process. I've worked with enough people to see that sometimes I notice there is no real movement in the upper chakras. The lower chakras are running the show, and it's not their incarnation to open up the inner channels. The inner channels are not open. And sometimes the emotional body is not even connected fully with the mental body. And the first time I saw this was working with somebody that actually had Kundalini psychosis. And I've worked with several people who have Kundalini psychosis, and it fractures the auric space because the way the inner channels have been forcibly opened hasn't maintained balance. Now that somebody else might completely disagree with that. That's just the experience that I have of it. Now, tomorrow I might understand something different. But, today, this is today. This is this moment. And that's another thing that I feel is worthy of saying is I don't feel embarrassed about what I say anymore. Of course, there will be people that know more than me. But that's the biggest problem that often we have. We don't speak because once you say it, all the interpretations can happen. All of the dissonance can come back. So people don't speak. They stay quiet because they've been punished so often. I would like to see that we can really say how we feel or what is going on for us. Because as it is spoken, something is moving in the body. There's a fresh aliveness that's maybe open to explore it in another way also. So for me, this is a never-ending story. And so far, I'm still here and I'm not fed up. And and there are moments when it's 5 o'clock in the morning and I'm on a webinar that Jesse and Elijah and Richard will say, yeah, she's grumpy for the first 5 minutes when she gets on. And then we ask her to do the attunement and we wonder where she went because they're tricksters. It's not just me that's a trickster because once I open, it's like, oh, how could I even waste my breath on that grumpy? But I enjoy my grumpy for 10 minutes or 15 or something.
I love that. Even just having enough love and compassion for your little grumpy as well, which I think we all need a reminder for. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, Tanmayo, wow! As always, just Well, I'm going to be searching for the words for days to come to thank you for this podcast. That much I know for sure. But obviously, in this moment, I can get there. There is some modicum of professionalism about me. Thank you so much for sharing yourself so abundantly, as always, here with us. I will put a link to the Venus sequence, the things that Tanmayo's referenced around the gene keys in the show notes below for sure. And also, actually, we have a partnership with Guy TV too, so there'll be a link to that in the show notes below. But also that retreat coming up, the day event for you to go check out Tanmayo in Colorado, I think is going to be really special. So we'll put a link to that in the show notes below and the description below for people to check out.
One more also, please. Richard is going to be doing 2 days in London in November, and that is going to be so exciting. All he's talking about is the Great Change, 2 days. So, and you'll find that on the events page. So we've got Boulder events and then London.
Epic.
And there's going to be lots of nice things going on, like Jesse, that I work with, of course, and the guides. He's busy organizing with some other guides to have a self-organized guides meeting in the pub.
Just a little bit of grounding. Let's call it grounding.
Finger food and soft drinks, and a few of the guides said, and a beer. so we're not so it's, for me, it's that joy of living in the world, not of it. It's pretty special.
Oh, every time you come on, the joy of living is just, it's effervescent in these spaces. Tanmayo, thank you so much, man. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy, yes, but also just such a massive heartfelt hug for the being that is you, that is Tanmayo. Obviously, we receive so much of you online, and just so much gratitude. Thank you.
Thank you, Amrit. It's a pleasure to spend time with you. Thanks. Bye.
There are so many thought forms and patterns that we're all living into all the time that are just projections upon projections upon projections, and it's just such a distortion.
I mean, I've had that where, people look at me and like, oh, they don't want to talk to me anymore. I'm not the good person anymore. I'm not this, I'm not that anymore. So I know that place, so, and again, I can only speak for me. I'm no longer ashamed of the choices that I made because I've processed them. Does it bring me remorse from time to time? Yes. Regret? No. I wish I could have been wiser. I wish, but I wouldn't be me without all of those things, So what do you do?
Yeah.
I just be grateful that you can, if you're given the opportunity, to apologize to the person that's been on the other end of your choices. And yet knowing that that person wouldn't be there if they weren't supposed to. So it's a tricky place to traverse. The image, if you hold the image of the good dad, the good husband, the good friend, the good whatever, good whatever, we hold images. How can I be transparent if I'm defending an image?
Oh, it's suffocating. Yeah.
It is. And then you start to notice why your freedom gets tied up in it and how your communication gets tied up in it, and you compromise. And I would watch myself until I couldn't. It was a different time. I really say that because I think that many people are, because we're in the time that we're in now, are managing to traverse this much more fluidly with each other. I think that there's often I hear people saying whatever they say about the next generations or whatever. And I said one night, I think I was on some Venus thing or wherever. And I said, I would like to put my 2 cents in here. Those of us who are of a certain vintage, and some a lot older than me, and some are no longer here, But for the last 100 years, I'm going to say it like this, and for certainly the last 60 or 70, we have, those of us who have been on this trail, been beating at the doors of density. You know, you think we went through all of that and all of those encounter programs and all of that we went through, if it's not going to help? I said, we are systems busters. We came in as systems busters so that the veil, that density, is not as dense as it was. So there's access for those who come after us. That was our job. We weren't just boomers hanging out making a mess of the planet. Some of these boomers have been working their butts off for a long time. And that's what we've been doing to make it more possible for those who come after us. Because once I clear one thing for me, it goes back generations and forward generations. But more than anything, it emanates out into the field. We know this. I mean, HeartMath is doing a marvelous job of
Yeah, it's feel very blessed. One of the certifications along with the Gene Keys guide was the heart math certification that I just felt the more I tuned in, I was like, these guys in the science and the
Yes.
and it was and it, what would like the exercises, like I do it with my clients, you can feel like they could, and even just the toughest nuts to crack, you just like, because they don't introduce it as a meditation, it's just like a sensory experience. Ready? Let's go. And it's like, it's the languaging, they've got it all dialed in. I'm like, well done, guys, well done. It's cool. It's cool.
And that's the thing. And I think that one of the blessings that I have for me is that I've been blessed with a way to communicate. So that even if I'm talking to a bunch of engineers, eventually they'll be going, I hate it when she's right. I just laugh. It's like, well, you know, your heart's your heart. You can say all the stuff you want. It's just that ability to give somebody a space where you don't blame them. That's the thing. You're not making them wrong. You're just saying, yeah, that's not my reality.
Yeah.
No? Or whatever it is. But
that was awesome.
To invite them, you know, to invite people into, you know, something that they might not have considered. It's pretty special. I'm glad you're doing what you're doing.
Inspired soul, you made it through to the end of another incredible podcast. Tanmayo, my goodness, what an incredible oracle, guide, teacher. So much love for her work in the Gene Keys. On screen, I'm going to pop open another couple of conversations for you to go even deeper with Richard Rudd. We've got conversations on the dream arc, the art of contemplation, the Gene Keys, the activation sequence, how to find your purpose. Lots of conversations that we've had with Richard Rudd here, which we absolutely love. Another conversation that we've had with Tanmayo about her origin stories and how she came to be who she is in and around the Gene Keys and her own kinesiologist offerings in the world. Just before I get there, I will take a moment to please ask you once again to humbly, please, if you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast. Everything you see around here is powered and empowered by your incredible subscription to this channel here on YouTube. If you can just take a moment to hit subscribe as I'm saying it, it's lighting up. Please take a moment, click subscribe, hit the bell notification icon. It helps with everything we're doing. And to all of you that are subscribed to the channel, my goodness, thank you so much for your incredible love and support. It means so much to everything that we're doing around here, promoting positivity, wisdom, the love of wisdom, the wisdom of love in and around the world through these conversations, which, I'm trusting that you guys are loving. It seems like you guys are. And a new request, if you guys are open to it, feel free to share these conversations around. Hopefully there might be somebody that you feel could really benefit or, you know, be inspired by this conversation on their path and their evolution. Feel free to share this podcast with them. Now, that's enough. Without all that stuff out of the way, on screen now, your opportunity to go even further with Inspired Evolution and the Gene Keys on screen. I can't wait to see you in the next video. I'll see you there. Go on, click it.